Stacey Buck. Stacey has been a speech language pathologist for 20 years. She is considered a thought leader in her field. She has presented to local and state and national audiences. She has helped parents and teachers guide their children towards next steps to better not just their educational life, but the quality of their childhood overall. Stacey, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
If you had to describe yourself as a specialist, I know that the world of speech language pathology can be a broad one, but if you had to describe to our parents today what your niche and what your specialty is, what would you describe it as?
I'm a language therapist. I can do the speech part, but I'm a language therapist. And so I help kids improve their communication, right? Whether it's oral or written, whether it's how they hear something. But it's also, I think, unique in that I have teaching background. So I understand how schools work and have those two hats that are kind of always on my head.
Very good for all of us to know. What is language therapy?
Ooh, this is my exciting part. So there's 5 areas of language, right? So there's vocabulary, semantics. That's how, not just your store of knowledge, but how you retrieve it. So people use that term word retrieval. It's really about that idea of maybe I know the word, but I say the wrong word, or I go or thing, use vague language. There's grammar, right? So there's syntax, it's your overall sentence structure. I really look at complex sentence structure there because that impacts, and I know we'll talk about this, but it impacts reading and writing. There's morphology, which is your affixes, your pronouns, your unstressed syllables in the language. Our kiddos miss these unstressed syllables, and there's a lot of meaning packed into them. There's phonology, which is related to decoding and spelling. It's how we understand the sounds, not how we say them. And then there's pragmatics, broadly social skills, but not just conversations. It's how do we think about what someone else might be thinking, for example.
Interesting. Very complex stuff, but made simple when you have a specialist on your side. I think a lot of our parents, when they call up PediaSource, some of the questions that come across our desks are, when is the right age for a child to see a language specialist? What are the signs and symptoms of a need? And I know you treat children from 4 years of age all the way up to college. If you wouldn't mind helping our parents understand, let's say, for children between the ages of, let's say, 4 years of age in 2nd and 3rd grade, what are the signs and symptoms that should give some cause to worry, but no need to panic, because as you know, you have specialists available to talk to on the phone to decide the level of need and then to decide what the next steps are. But could you break that down?
I will. I want to first let parents know, though, that just because I specialize starting at 4 years old and up, there are people in our field who specialize in the little babies, like birth to 3 and into 4, right? So that's just not my area of expertise.
Got it.
But when you get into preschool and those early grammar school grades, a lot of what I see are concerns about following directions. Does it look like my child's spacing out, or my child's being defiant? Those are ways that I often hear about it from parents, and then I think, is there something going on with following directions? Starting in 3rd grade, we kind of typically say now the kids are reading to learn information, right? And so that's another time frame in which parents might come to me and say, oh my gosh, the teachers didn't really have any concerns before, and we didn't really, but now that we think back on it, we wonder, were they that struggle with following directions at a younger age, was that part of not understanding everything? And now that there's all this information they have to read and they're starting to have to write, now we're seeing struggles, right? So parents come to me then. Jump ahead to middle school. Often families come to me in that time frame of life for kids because they're struggling with writing. And writing is very complex. It's not just how you organize your thoughts, but that's a big piece of it. It's sentence structure. There's a lot going on there, right? But it's also in that middle school age range, how do we work with groups, right, on a project? How do I get along with my friends on the playground or hanging out? And so that's another time frame.
So how would you treat an issue like that? So if it were a middle school child who had issues not just with writing, but talk to me about how your treatment might look like. Because normally parents don't think, I need a speech language pathologist because my child is somewhat articulate. Do
Right.
you normally see children who are quite articulate, but then what are the problems? So they'll have problems on the playground. They have problems with writing. So maybe you can help us understand what would we see in writing that would be indicative of something.
Sure. There's sort of two ways that it might look. One might be that it's very routinized. There's not a lot of extra information. The child looks like they've written a paragraph, but they've kind of said the same thing over and over and over again.
Interesting.
Or it's like stream of consciousness, right? They have every idea in their head on the paper. It's not organized. There aren't really good markers, for where this one sentence ends and the next one begins. And they might have great vocabulary, but it's not quite right for that particular context.
Okay. And so how would you, in a very, if you could sum it up for us, what are one of the things you might, and it's a broad question, but how might you address that?
We break it down, right? We go back to those 5 areas of language, and we look at what do we want to focus on first and really hone in on that.
Fantastic.